Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and I would like to thank you for joining in to hear our discussion about autism awareness. April is Autism Awareness Month, and it seems like the topic's coming up a lot more frequently lately, so we're going to learn a lot more about that. If you have any questions about tonight's topic and would like to speak with one of our lovely guests, please feel free to call in at 781-270-9199. And you'll see the number up on your screen now and throughout the show, so please feel free to call. If you think of a question later on or have a suggestion or idea for a future topic, please feel free to email me at talk@bcattv.org. I love getting email that's not spam, so please send me a note. I would like to thank the crew for this evening because they've given up their Wednesday night to come to BCAT on a cold, windy night. Colleen Moore is another volunteer here and fellow board member, and she helps me out every other Wednesday. So Colleen is directing tonight, and I would like to thank her for coming in tonight. And I would also like to thank Brandy Sales, who's also a volunteer and board member here, and he's helping me out by doing camera and making my guests look awesome. And also the staff members here that are helping out tonight, Corey McNeil and Mike Duvall. Without them and without their colleagues, BCAT would not be around, so I really appreciate all their help in working on the show. And lastly, I would like to thank my husband Paul for staying home for Daddy Date Night. Hope you didn't get sucked into playing Batman on the Wii, and hopefully you had fun reading stories to the kids. And hope the kids have a good night, and I will see you in a little bit. And now we get to meet our lovely guests. I would like to thank Arianne, Kindle, and Lisa, I forgot Lisa's last name already, Lisa Allen. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Arianne, for joining me about today's topic and giving up your Wednesday evening on a cold, windy night. At least it stopped raining.
This is true.
So, thank you. And I have my cheat sheet, so hopefully I will stick to it because I am like the queen of tangents that I tell everybody. So why don't we start out telling me and telling our guests at home, our friends at home, a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up,
Sure.
how you came to Burlington,
Yep.
and how you became interested in being a consultant for families affected by autism.
Sure. So I grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
And I went to the University of Michigan for undergrad. When I was there, I studied cognitive science, which has really nothing to do with working with children on the autism spectrum. It really doesn't, if you believe it or not. And then I moved out to Massachusetts in 2004 and started working at the New England Center for Children, which is a school in Southborough. It is a specialized school for children specifically with autism. And that's where I became interested in applied behavior analysis, which is what the service that we provide now. And
now, did you specifically go there to learn more about autism, or was it just like, it's a job, it'll pay off the student loans?
I definitely went there to learn more about autism. When I was in high school, I volunteered at a school in Kalamazoo for children with autism. It's called Croydon Avenue School. And I actually taught swim lessons there.
Oh, fun.
And that sort of sparked my interest in working with children with autism. And then I also was a student intern in high school in our special education classroom. So I definitely had an interest in special education, but I didn't do that for undergrad. And then when I was done with undergrad, I went into the job field, which can be very tricky. And I found this job at the New England Center for Children, and then I moved out here to start working there. And then I worked on my master's degree through the New England Center for Children. It was at Northeastern University.
Oh, great.
And my master's degree is in applied behavior analysis.
Okay, and now my understanding is you have your own consulting business.
Yes, yep, that's correct.
So is that like, do you work with children in and families in Burlington?
I do, yep.
Okay.
Yep, I work with, we have several clients that live in Burlington. We do some consulting work in Burlington Public Schools. But primarily we provide home-based services in Burlington.
Okay. And later on I want to kind of learn more about what the difference is, home-based versus school-based versus all of that.
Yep.
So
and we do have our center in Burlington as
stay
well,
tuned.
so, yes.
And Lisa, can you just tell us a little bit about, did you grow up in Burlington? You know, how you kind of came to be in this area?
Well, I grew up in a town in Central Mass called Webster.
I know where that is.
Oh my gosh. And Sam was actually, my son was born in Worcester and spent his first 6 years in Webster.
Okay.
My husband was laid off for a period of time, and he's a financial writer. So he had a difficult time finding work in Central Mass. It's not really a financial hub. And he tried finding work in Boston. Long story short, he ended up taking a job in New York City, and we did the long distance commute, the weekend reunion kind of thing, because I didn't want to take Sam out of his placement out of school. And we did
How long
that
did
for
that happen?
a year and a half, and it was very,
Very
difficult.
long year and a half, I'm sure.
It really was. Finally, we moved down to southwestern Connecticut so that he could commute to New York.
Okay.
And we were there for 2 years before we came to Burlington. My husband got a job in Boston. And
Oh, good. I'm like, I hope he's still not in New York.
No, and we looked into different communities, and we thought Burlington had a lot to offer, so here we are.
Well, we're going to go a little out of order from my cheat sheet, but you mentioned Sam, and Sam has been diagnosed as having autism or being affected by autism?
Yes.
What's the correct terminology for that? Are either of those acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, want to be politically correct. Now, when did you find out? You know, did you always suspect? Did you always know? Was he in school when you first learned?
He was diagnosed at 2 years and 9 months.
Okay.
We thought there were some strange things going on
Okay.
with Sam in his early toddler years. He never responded to his name.
Okay.
Did
he speak? Did he
he
learn how
didn't
to
have
talk?
any single words at the point that he was diagnosed.
Okay.
So the speech delay was a huge part of
That
our
must have been
concern.
hard for you because it's like I couldn't wait for my kids to start talking. Like, what do you want?
Well, I think Sam was 4 or 5 before he said "mommy." Wow. Which is mind-boggling. You know that you have a child and you can't wait for them to acknowledge you verbally, and you just wait and wait. And
Now,
wait.
is he your only child?
He is.
Okay.
Yes. And we knew he wasn't responding to his name. We knew he wasn't speaking.
Okay.
He was very difficult to calm down. I would call it overstimulated, very difficult to get to sleep at night. Once he was asleep, but
Slept like a rock.
exactly. And he didn't engage with toys in the functional way. He wouldn't push a truck on the floor.
Okay.
He would collect a variety of toys and stash them in the corner of the room and line them up, kind of like a hoarding kind of behavior.
Oh, okay.
He would do the same thing with crayons. We couldn't get him to use crayons functionally.
Now, this is like all the time. Okay, because I'm
All the
thinking,
time.
okay, my daughter took all of her shoes and lined them up one after the other across her whole room until she ran out of shoes. But
Right. No, I
that
mean,
was just like a random occurrence.
he
so,
always
okay.
seemed busy.
Okay.
He always seemed like he had work to do. And I know that sounds silly, but he'd have his head in the toy box. He'd be moving toys all day from one place to another, never once engaging in the toys as toys. So, things were strange. And believe it or not, on WBZ radio, Dr. Murray Feingold does a medical minute spot.
Oh, okay.
And he did a medical minute on Asperger's syndrome.
Oh,
And one of the
okay.
things that he said was a hallmark of Asperger's syndrome at the time, this is what he said, was a lot of these kids have some strange hand flapping behaviors. And I thought, well, gee, Sam does a lot of hand flapping. I always thought he was excited. But having heard that, I thought, I better get a referral and get him checked out.
Little red, yellow flag going up. Okay.
Yes, and this is where I would say that Sam's pediatrician really blew it.
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm like, wouldn't the pediatrician have picked up on this?
Yes.
At least at like 18 months about the verbalization and.
We did the the auditory testing. We
Okay.
did, checked his ears for recurrent ear infections and things like that. That was a dead end. And the response I got to the speech delay was, "Oh, he's a boy. Boys are slower than girls."
That must have been incredibly frustrating for
When you know
as a
something's
parent.
really wrong, yes.
So it's like, don't blow me off. There's really a serious issue here.
Right.
Wow.
So, I basically demanded the referral
Okay.
to get my son evaluated by a neuropsychologist.
Okay.
This is different than a neurologist. They're really focused on the aspects of how the brain learns,
Okay.
the different behaviors, and the emotional package, the social development,
Okay.
communication, things like that. And that is when we got our diagnosis.
And how old was he about then? Was this
2
the 2
years,
years, 9 months?
9 months.
Okay.
Yes, and
Which is basically the time a lot of kids start preschool.
right.
Wow.
Right. So we found ourselves, immediately eligible for special education, and Sam has, been a full-time student ever since.
Wow. Now, how long were there, because he was developmentally delayed, I guess, for the first 2 years, 9 months, how long did it take him to catch up to, or has he caught up?
He has not caught up. He still struggles with communication, leads to a lot of frustration, a lot of maladaptive behaviors. It's kind of like at the age of 14, cognitively and behaviorally, Sam is probably 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
While he has some splintered skills in different areas that are nearly age appropriate, almost all of his skills
Okay.
are way below age level. So
Okay.
it's kind of like living with a toddler for an extended period of time.
Forever.
In a lot of ways, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
You need a medal. You need a medal. So, okay, well, thank you for sharing that story. But I want to learn a little bit more about the scientific side. Now, we mentioned that there's a spectrum of autism.
Definitely.
So it sounds like Sam is at one of the ends. Now, how big is the spectrum? And what are some of the different key points in it?
Sure. So the spectrum is definitely a wide range.
Okay.
There's mild autism, and then there's more severe autism.
Okay.
They recently changed the DSM-5, which is what psychologists use
Okay.
To diagnose autism. I'm not a psychologist, so
Okay.
I'm not well versed in it. But
I was a psychology major, and it was a DSM-3 when I was in
Yeah.
school, so okay, it's changed a bit since then.
yeah, they've recently just changed it to include the autism. To include autism spectrum disorders
Okay.
as one diagnosis, where there used to be several diagnoses that could be considered autism. They had autistic disorder, PDD-NOS, which a lot of children received that diagnosis where they didn't fit all the criteria
Okay.
for autism, so they gave them this PDD-NOS.
Would it be like a mild autism, or is it
not necessarily?
Not necessarily. Okay.
No, I think that sometimes they tried to give that diagnosis if they felt that it was more
okay.
mild. And then there's also Asperger's.
Okay.
And so the
So
spectrum,
Asperger's is like a subdivision of autism.
correct. And they
Okay.
have tried to create now an umbrella where all of those 3 diagnoses are
Okay.
under the autism spectrum
Okay.
disorder. And they're sort of moving away from using those other 3
Oh,
diagnoses.
okay. So now,
So now they're labeling
Now the
more
bubbles
mild
are kind-
and
okay.
versus severe.
so it's more of a linear thing instead of a bubble thing.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what they're. I believe.
At the
I'm
mo-
not
okay.
100% sure. I'm not
Okay.
a psychologist again, but I think that's why.
Well,
they
spectrum, I
sort
think
of-
like rainbow. So,
Yeah, definitely. I think.
so there's red and yellow.
Yeah.
Okay, red, orange, yellow. Okay. So, what are some of the signs? I mean, Lisa had mentioned some of the signs. The nonverbal.
Sure.
The hand flapping. You said, but was that more of an Asperger's thing, or is that more of an autism thing, or? We're getting away from the bubbles.
Yeah,
so
no, that's
anyway.
okay. I mean, some of the early signs of autism that
Okay.
I think pediatricians now are more aware of are, the lack of language, the language delays,
Okay.
lack of eye contact, not showing interest in others, inability to play appropriately with toys, as Lisa mentioned.
Okay.
Some of the stereotypy, which is the hand flapping or repetitive type of behaviors. Those are all sort of the early signs of autism.
Okay. Now, kind of a slight tangent. I was actually, when my children were young, I tried teaching them sign language because from what I had learned, they can communicate via sign sooner than they can speak.
Mm-hmm.
Could a child with autism learn sign language? Or is that something that would be out of their realm of?
No, we definitely have some clients that we use sign language with, and primarily use sign language with.
Okay.
People often try to use sort of what they call a multimodal approach, so they'll also have pictures that they can choose from.
Yeah, somebody was telling me about like a book and just point to whatever you want in the book.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to use a textbook or picture exchange communication is sort of the formal term for it. You can teach children to take pictures off of a board and hand them to you to tell you what they want or what they see or what they hear. Or they can use more of a static board, which is where they point to something that they want or hear or see. So there's kind of different things, but we do use sign language, and often if we have a child who isn't producing a lot of language, we typically try to start with sign language. Our company does, just because of the ease of sign language. You can go anywhere and the child can use sign language, where if you're trying to use pictures, you might have to make sure that the pictures come with you everywhere. So,
and then you might encounter something that
you don't have a picture.
It's not in the book.
Exactly. So we
although
always
sometimes you might find a sign that you don't know what it is either.
Yeah,
so.
and you might create a sign on the spot.
That's true.
And you also will always want to pair spoken language with signs and pictures, so that there's exposure to spoken language, and the ultimate goal is spoken language. So
cool.
Yeah.
See, sign language is useful. We should have a show on that. Okay, is autism genetic? Is there like a genetic code?
So they haven't. They say that they haven't identified one specific gene that causes autism. They have said that they have found multiple genes that are involved in autism. There's definitely some sort of genetic component to it. Siblings who have autism, their siblings are 15 to 30 times more likely to receive a diagnosis.
So there's
of
also
autism
like
a
hereditary issue or just genetic within the same generation, I guess. Now, is there a hereditary aspect of it? So like if my uncle had autism, my mother's brother had autism, there's a more likely chance?
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Just wanted to throw it out. Are there medical tests, like blood tests or some other, you mentioned the neuropsychologist, but are there tests that you can find out?
There are no medical tests in regards to blood tests.
So you can't do like an MRI or a CAT scan or something and map the brain?
Not at this point. I think they're doing a lot of research on that.
Not that you'd want to send a 2-year-old through a CAT scan,
but... Right, exactly, yeah.
Now, I remember, that's why I have my cheat sheet. Does it tend to affect one gender over another? Because like in my limited space, I have a son and a daughter, but out of their scope of friends, 2 boys have autism, and I'm not aware of any of their girlfriends having autism. Is it more prevalent in boys? And
it is more prevalent.
Lisa
in boys.
has a son, so.
Yeah, it's about 5 times more prevalent in boys.
That much?
Yeah, the CDC just came out with new numbers, and they said that it's 1 in every 42 boys that have autism,
Oh, wow.
and 1 in every 189 girls. So there is a pretty
So
significant.
it's almost like 2 to 1.
Yeah, five
Almost.
to
5 to 1.
Yeah.
5 to 1. Okay, yeah, I can't do math.
No,
Sorry.
that's right. So it is much more prevalent
Okay.
in boys.
Now, I remember what I think is not too long ago, but it could have been 10 to 20 years ago, there were PSAs on TV about your child's the chances of your child becoming a professional football player, like 1 in 3,827, the odds of your child having autism is 1 in 60. Now, I just read an article recently where now they predicting 1 in 50? Or is it still like 1 in 60, or is it still just kind of a fuzzy statistic?
I think about 10 to 15 years ago, in 2000, was when they had that rate of 1 in 150, which was around for a while. And then just pretty recently, they came out with the 1 in 68.
Oh, okay.
So that's a pretty recent
Okay.
number.
I just don't remember
it
seeing the
has,
shows recently.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely on an increasing trend, that's for sure.
Okay. So do you think, phrase down here is, has it changed in the past 5 years? And I'm wondering, has autism become more prevalent, or has the diagnosis become more common? Can you answer? Do you know even? Because that seems kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I think
Okay.
the hypothesis is sort of that it's a combination of those two things.
Okay.
That there's more awareness of it.
Okay.
That children are getting diagnosed earlier so that they can get services earlier and earlier.
And it could also be like the restructuring of the spectrum from the bubble thing that...
I believe they say that that's not going to affect the rates, but I'm not 100% sure on that either, sorry.
Now, we mentioned it earlier that Asperger's is related to autism. Did you want to... I think we kind of covered that. Now, is something like ADD or ADHD related? Or is that totally...
Yeah, I don't think... I'm not...
Because you had mentioned, trying to... The child's very active and the mind is always working and always things to do. And when I hear that, I also think ADHD, where the kid's kind of hard to focus. And are they related at all, do you know?
I don't think that they're related.
Okay. So ADD and ADHD isn't part of the spectrum?
No.
Not part of the spectrum?
No.
Okay.
But children with autism often have symptoms similar to those of ADHD, with difficulties following directions, or a difficult time attending to tasks, or large group settings. They have, a more difficult time with those situations, which I think is similar to children with ADHD. But I think typically children with ADHD don't have the primary symptoms of autism, with, the social difficulties and language delays and those types of things.
Okay. Now, from what I know about ADD and ADHD, they can be treated with medicine or, chemical enhancements or whatever you want to call it. Can autism be treated and helped with some form of medication?
There is some research on some medications for children who have more severe behaviors, so self-injurious behaviors, aggressive behaviors. And
not that you want to throw chemicals on it to,
Most definitely not. I mean, I think that's usually kind of a more last resort type of thing. There are doctors that will prescribe medications for children on the autism spectrum, but I think that's usually kind of, when there's more severe behaviors.
Okay. Now, how are children referred to Kindle behavioral consultants?
So there's sort of a few different ways that clients come to us. Their psychologists or their developmental pediatricians may give them a list of providers in the area.
Now, do you start when they're really young, or do you start with, do you just work with school-age children?
We work with children as young as 2, and our oldest client is 19 right now. And some of them have started very little and very young, and some have started later. So it kind of depends.
Okay. Now, how old was Sam when you started working with Arianne?
Actually, we've been working with Arianne, within the Burlington
Okay.
public school system. The
Okay.
district provides services for us through
okay.
Arianne's company. Sam first started getting ABA therapy at the age of 3.
Oh, okay. So shortly after he was diagnosed.
Yes, he and I have really never known a life without ABA.
Yay! It's good to have that support system.
Oh, yes.
Okay, speaking of support system, another tangent. Now, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but having children of my own, it's a challenge every day.
Mm-hmm.
It must be an even greater challenge for you to face having to raise this child who has a hard time concentrating, who has, an eternal toddler.
Right.
Are there support systems out there for you? Yes, you get help from Arianne and her colleagues, but do you ever have the opportunity to talk to other parents that have children with autism?
Yeah, there are a couple of different ways to connect with other parents and get support. There are regional autism resource centers
Okay.
that provide support groups in different towns. For example, the Northeast Arc. When I first moved to Burlington, I'm not sure if they're still doing it, the Northeast Arc used to run a support group out of the Burlington
Okay.
Library, and that would be for people of Burlington and neighboring towns
Okay.
to get together to exchange resources,
Okay.
support, talk about their kids, ask questions about
Okay.
what's available out there. And by law, every school district is required to have a special education parent advisory council.
Oh, okay.
And that is run by parents, and
Mhm.
it is there to support the parents that are in that special ed system.
Okay.
So many times, you can go to an event run by SpedPAC in your
Okay.
town that invite people like Arianne and
Mhm.
doctors and other professionals to come and give a talk and answer questions,
Okay.
panel discussions, things like that, just basically to help you find resources and find your way.
Okay, because I know sometimes, that friend at the other end of the phone, I got to get out of here, let's go get our nails done or something. So I was wondering if there was that kind of support system specifically for parents that are affected by autism. So an
I'd say it
answer.
is what you make
Yeah.
of it.
Okay.
Most often, if your child starts off in the public school system, you're meeting all kinds of other parents with both typically developing and not typically developing children.
Okay.
So you kind of develop your own network there, and if you have other children, they play with other children, you meet their families. So usually there is, an inherent support system within your public school too.
Okay. I feel like I played ping pong. So, what's the process of initial assessment? Like when you first meet a child, is there like a checklist that you go through, or how do you figure out?
So usually the children come to us with their neuropsychological assessment, and they do a lot of assessments, and that provides us with a lot of information of skills that we need to work on. And then we do our own assessments as well.
Okay.
Usually we use skills assessments if we're looking to teach children new skills. We'll figure out where they may have deficits and what to focus on. And then we also will, if there are problem behaviors, take a closer look at those problem behaviors and complete something that we usually call like a functional behavior assessment to figure out why they're engaging in those behaviors, and then how we can work on
And
them.
how often do you work with these children? with a child in particular? I mean, do you see them once a month, once a week, daily?
Sure,
Yeah.
it really depends on the
Okay.
student. Some students we just provide consultation to, our supervisors maybe once a month just to the parents,
Okay.
to just check in with them to see if there's anything they need assistance with. And we also have students that we see all the way up to 25 hours, or actually 30 hours a week.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So-
intense.
Yeah.
So you become everyone's best friend at
Yeah,
that level.
definitely,
Yeah, it's like a
definitely.
colleague.
Yeah, there's a lot of research on early intervention.
Okay. Now, do you work with early intervention?
We don't work with the organization Early
Oh, okay.
Intervention, but we provide services to
Well, that's what
children
I
who
meant.
are in the,
Yeah.
you know, the 2 to 3 and 4
Okay.
age range.
Okay.
And
So like, okay, never mind. My brain is not functioning right. I
No
think it's
worries.
because I only had 2 cups of coffee today. So what are some of the treatments you said if there's like a skill that needs to be worked on?
Sure.
Can you give me like a generic example of how you might work on a particular skill?
Sure.
Like
so,
language development or something else?
Yeah, that's a big one. But
Okay, pick a smaller one. Pick a smaller one.
So for language development, there are several different strategies that we might use. We want to make sure that children are understanding what we're saying, so we call that receptive language.
Okay.
So we may, if we know that there's a receptive language deficit, we may start working on words that we know they don't know, that they will commonly use in their everyday activities. So we may start with teaching them.
More.
Yeah, more we actually try to avoid.
Oh, okay.
Just
See,
because,
that's why you're here, to teach me.
Yeah, more is
All done.
yes, we do.
All
We
done.
do work on all done. More, what we find with when you teach a child to say more is that they're not really telling you what they want. So
Okay.
they might come up to you and sign more.
Like more what?
Well, more what? Yeah. So we try to teach when we are working initially on language. We try to teach specific words first. So
Okay.
if they often ask for their milk, we might teach milk, or chips, or something that they're going to
Ooh, I didn't
frequently.
know chips. Any cracker?
Yeah, there you go. Something that they're going to frequently ask for is what we first start with.
Or
when you're-
chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. Candy, something like that.
All right. What, I know this is another, when you're talking about a spectrum, it's kind of hard to get specific answers, but I'm going to try anyway.
No, that's okay.
What are the goals for the services that you provide?
Sure. So ABA in general.
Okay. What is ABA?
So
Let's back
ABA,
up.
yeah, sure. It's
Applied behavioral
Yep, applied behavior analysis.
analysis. Okay, behavior analysis.
It's a science of human behavior.
Okay.
And we take a look at the environment and how it's affecting behavior.
Okay.
Specifically with children with autism, we look to increase socially significant behaviors, which is a lot of different types of
Well, you
behaviors.
mentioned environment. Is that like the home environment, the school environment,
Just in
both of them? Or?
Yep, environments in general. Just what is maintaining behaviors, what is not happening that is making it so that behaviors aren't occurring. What's going on? Why is there no language? Why are they not engaging in eye contact? How can we change the environment to give them reinforcement for those things and to teach them those skills? So with ABA, we look to increase socially significant behaviors, which can be things like self-help skills, brushing teeth. It can be language. It can be academics. There's sort of a variety of things that we work on. And then we also work to decrease any behaviors that may be interfering with learning, aggression, self-injurious behaviors, stereotypy, those types of repetitive behaviors that may affect a child's ability to learn. So that's sort of ABA in a nutshell. With a specific student, we read those assessments that we get from the neuropsychologists or from school, and then we work with the parents and the educators to create goals that we want to work on. We don't tackle everything at once. We sort of break down what we think is the most important at first, and then build from there.
Okay. Now, another tangent. I recently had a guest talking about children and individuals with Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And my recollection is that all of the services provided are to allow individuals with Down syndrome to function normally in society. Not necessarily a cure, because there's no cure, but
Sure.
allow them to normally function. Is that a goal with individuals with autism as well?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we want, we want our clients to function as,
Okay.
as best they can, and to.
Okay. So they don't need to come 30 hours a week to see you anymore.
Exactly. We want parents to be able to,
Okay.
to be able to help them with those everyday living activities, and to be independent in their home, and to use language to communicate their wants and needs. So yeah, we definitely have a very similar goal.
Okay. Now we touched upon this as well. You talked about the environment, and where do your consultants work with the individuals with autism, and kind of elaborating on that, why are those different environments beneficial to both you and the client?
Sure. Our agency provides primarily home-based services.
Okay. So you would actually go to Lisa's house?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's the majority of our services. We do work very closely with the child's school. We do
Okay.
some consulting in schools as well.
Okay.
A lot of our students will go in once a month to meet with the team at school,
Okay.
just to make sure that we're all working on the same skills in the same way,
Okay.
because consistency really is key. Generalization is a challenge for children with autism, meaning
Okay.
they may be able to do one skill in one setting but not in another. So we want to
Okay.
make sure we can have the child do those skills in both settings, and how we
Okay.
can assist them with that. So it is important to be working closely with schools as well.
Okay.
We also have a center. The majority of the services that take place at our center are social skills groups.
Okay.
So they're
Now, how big is a group? Because I think Lisa touched upon, or I'm losing my mind, but somebody touched upon, big groups are intimidating and challenging,
yeah.
I guess. So how is this like the group settings to help them with social skills?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our social skills groups are typically anywhere from 2 to 6 kids.
Yeah, okay.
Is the largest group that
Now, are
we
they
have.
generally grouped by age or by skill level?
Yeah,
or
we
both?
attempt. Yep, kind of
Okay.
both. We try to make sure that the children in the group are working on learning the similar skills.
Okay. So it's not who's ever available Tuesdays at 3 to come in.
No,
Okay.
it can take us a while to sort of.
And
put
what do you do
together
in
a
something
program.
like the setting like that?
So in the social skills group, we usually have 2 to 3 specific social skills that we may be working on.
Okay.
In the specific 2-hour session,
Okay.
and then we work on those goals,
Okay.
those skills over the course of time.
Okay.
Our youngest group is 2 to 3-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
It's like a
and
play group.
It is a play group. It's a lot of play. We try to make the groups really fun, but then we also take those opportunities when they're presented to us to work on
Okay.
things such as responding to name, or
Okay.
asking for a toy that they want, sort of those basic social skills
And
when
not
they're little
ripping
like
it out
that.
of someone else's hands.
Yeah. And then we have a group that is for 10 to 13-year-olds as well, and they're working more on things like, what do you do if someone bullies you? How do you
Okay.
respond? Who should you tell? How do you initiate a conversation? How do you talk about topics you're not interested in talking about?
Okay.
Those types of skills. So there's a
Oh,
wide
wow.
range of what
Okay.
we work on in the social skills setting.
Okay. So it's more of an interaction thing.
Yeah.
Now, is there like an agoraphobia type thing that comes along with autism? Like, I don't want to go in a grocery store or movie
there-
theaters or just big crowds or?
It depends on the kid. There definitely can be.
Okay.
It's not always necessarily the crowds, but it may be anticipation of a noise that they may hear,
Okay.
or they had a bad experience somewhere and now they don't want to go there again. So it's really dependent on the child.
Okay. Sorry, just really, really interested. It's like my mind is. Okay, Okay, got to read my little question here. What kind of written documentation is provided to, so after Lisa and her son meet with you or you meet with her son, is there anything written down for you to give to Lisa to help her work along, like a cheat sheet, a checklist of make sure you do this every day, make sure you do this every day?
Yeah, we do for some clients. We do provide something like that. When we first start with a student, if they haven't had a lot of ABA previously, we may have them collect data so that we can see when certain behaviors are happening. If we're trying to target maladaptive behaviors, what's happening right before the behavior, and then based on when we figure out why something's happening, we may give a parent a cheat sheet. This is a behavior plan that we're all going to try to follow. We try to make our behavior plans or programs that we're working on easy enough and convenient enough for parents to do in their sort of everyday lives, because it can get a little hectic. And then parents also have a lot of resources, like Lisa was mentioning, in the community as well.
Because I was just thinking about, along that checklist, I was wondering if you had any anecdotes or any feedback that you wanted to provide about what it is on a daily basis, things that you have to go through.
Sure.
Is there a checklist that you have, whether or not Arianne gave it to you, or?
Well, I would say that parents are pretty involved in the ABA session because you're trying to target life skills and functional skills in the home setting. The parent is not only a resource to answer questions about what's the typical routine for them, but the parent has to know how it is they're teaching your child. What are the steps they're using to teach hand washing? I want to do the same thing, because not only do kids with autism fail to generalize skills between school and home, they fail to generalize skills between instructors. So something he might do for her, he may not do for me. So the steps are very detailed, and we follow them step by step with the same amount of assistance for the child. I would say on a daily basis, our life is kind of like go crash. It's just hectic, frenetic pace. Like I mentioned, having a toddler for 15 years, everything that the child needs to do to get ready for school, to eat, to use the bathroom, to care for themselves, to get dressed, to entertain themselves, to learn a leisure skill. If those are deficits for your child, you need to be with your child every moment of the day, which makes it very difficult, to try to embody that typical family life. I gave up a long time ago on trying to meet my previous expectations of having the typical family. It's not feasible for us to put Sam in the car and just go to the grocery store or go to a birthday party for someone in the family without really being on top of him, helping him cope with the environment. Some of those environments are too loud. Grocery store, you can hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. The carts make a lot of noise. The freezer section's really cold. There are other children running around. Their high-pitched noises might bother your child. So it's really, everything is really more of a chore than it would be for most families. And a lot of families don't realize that. I can't tell my son to wake up in the morning, get his teeth brushed, go feed himself breakfast, and put his shoes on and get ready for the bus. I am involved in every step in that process, and that's from morning to night. So it is overwhelming and it is intense, like you mentioned.
Now, over the past 15 years, have some of those, has Sam been able to learn some of those tasks? Like you mentioned, hand washing. So instead of go in the bathroom, turn the water on, put the soap on your hands, rub your hands together. Now, do you still have to go through that step, or can you just say, go wash your hands now? Just using that as an example.
That's a
But
good question.
Yeah.
He can wash his hands. We are still working on the skill in a task analysis broken down into steps, because what I would get from him if I said go wash your hands is what you'd get from a lot of kids. Turn the water on, all
Yeah.
done. We're going for that thoroughness and that completion of the task
Okay.
to the level that he has to have when he's an adult,
Okay.
because he is not going to progress on that task unless he has to perform at that level every
Okay.
time. It's the repetition of
Okay.
every skill, the number of times that he is taught a vocabulary word before he learns what it is,
Mhm.
both receptively and expressively. Most kids, even at a year and a half, you can say that's a truck, and he'll know that's a truck.
Okay.
For a child with autism, it can take months to learn a new
Okay.
word. So it's precision. We try to maintain that,
Mhm.
but we also try to make it less confusing for the child, because
Okay.
if he has expectations that you're going to do something different than someone else,
Okay.
it just leads to frustration.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, over time, are there some of those skills? Do you always have to go step by step for everything, or is there an eventual learning, so it's
Yes.
not totally intense for you? I
The
can still.
the items on the list change.
Oh, okay.
I was very concerned when we first got the diagnosis. He's never going to learn how to eat with a fork. There's no way. And I was reassured by my neuropsychologist, he will learn to eat with a fork. It may take a long time. So things like that he's mastered,
Oh, okay.
And then once that mastery happens, there's always a higher level skill to replace it on the
Okay.
list. So
Like tying your shoes.
tying your shoes, putting your socks on correctly, knowing that when you go to put your shirt on and one sleeve is inside out, how to deal with that.
I'm going through that with my 5.5-year-old right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, how to get someone's attention. I mean, if you think about how many times during the day you might, just yell out to your child or your husband for help because you need help with something, that a child with autism doesn't have those skills, doesn't know how
Okay.
to get attention, doesn't know how oral, motor-wise to say those words
Oh,
that they
okay.
need to get the help, and they just feel helpless and frustrated, and then you get all the the behaviors that are so difficult to deal with because they're at a deficit, they're completely frustrated, and you don't know what they want.
Yeah. Like you said, how old is he now? 14?
14.
Because I'm thinking, sometimes with autism, you had mentioned getting, the child getting physical. I think pretty soon, if not already, he's probably able to overtake you if necessary.
Oh yes.
That's got to be scary.
It is scary at times. I don't want to say that you completely get used to it, but you learn to be more cautious around the child, and you learn to read bodily cues that he's getting
okay.
frustrated and he might act out. There was a period of time where I couldn't turn my back on him without, possibly suffering an aggression. Lots of hair pulls, lots of bites, lots of kicking, things like that. And yeah, my child is taller than me now. So higher level skills like taking a shower or setting the table, learning to cut with a knife. I mean, those things are challenging by themselves. And then when you have the behavior added in, those are the behaviors that Arianne mentioned detract
Okay.
from the ability to learn because they are taking over the entire moment.
Wow. I'm just thinking of my friend with the 3-year-old going, she's got a long road ahead of her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to Arianne. I'm not sure if we finished this question or not, but is there a time when all of the services and all the learning that you provide is turned over to the parents or family and schools, and you can kind of dismiss that child or that client? Is there a time when you can sever the relationship? Or sever sounds like a pretty severe word.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a specific time.
Okay.
Sometimes parents who usually have a child more on the mild side of the autism
Okay.
spectrum may get to a point where they're comfortable implementing behavior plans we've created, or
Okay.
they've gotten to the point where they know how to work on the self-help skills,
Okay.
or they can do those things themselves, and that may be when we would potentially end our services. But usually our services do go on for a pretty long time.
Okay. I'm like quickly going over because we have like about 5-6 minutes left, and I'm like, okay, a lot of this stuff we've already covered because I'm going totally out of
order.
Out of order.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about the group settings at the center. Are there, or did we already mention, other services that are provided at the center itself that take priority over trying to do those same services at home or at school?
If we're going to have, usually the services at the center are social skills groups.
Okay.
So that's typically what's at the center. We do
Okay.
do some individual one-on-one
Okay.
ABA services there, but the majority of our one-on-one ABA is in the home setting, because typically that is where children, that's where they need the most work in regards to their self-help skills and behaviorally.
Okay.
So.
Totally off the script. Having a child, I don't know who to address this to, but having a child with autism, they can't tie their, in some cases they might not be able to tie their shoes. They're not up to the same level as other children at their age or that they see at school. Is there a psychological component that needs to be addressed for these kids? Do they see themselves as different and are concerned about it, or is the concern not something that they really care about?
Again, I think it's kind of dependent on where the
Does that
child
make
is on the.
sense
Yeah,
even?
it
Okay.
does make sense. I think it depends on where the child is on the spectrum,
Okay.
and how aware they are of their social deficits. I think there are children on the spectrum that,
Okay.
or who have a diagnosis on the spectrum, who are aware that they have a difficult time in social situations.
Okay.
But then the children who are more severely affected by autism, I don't think. I think they
Okay.
they may not.
So I'm just wondering,
know.
do we have to, in addition to meeting with you, in addition to
Some,
meeting
yeah,
with the schools, do they also have to go see a child psychologist and figure out how come I can't play soccer?
Sure.
Right.
I think it's very dependent on the child.
Okay.
Yeah, and those children that happen to have a diagnosis of autism, who are social and actively seek companionship and can seek a communication partner and don't know why they're failing, those are the kids that are going to likely fall in that scenario that you talk about, that, gee, I don't know why this person won't talk to me, or I'm
Right.
lonely. And then there are children that are more severely affected that aren't innately seeking the communication aspect. So they would probably be less aware of the differences. They're often a little more isolated anyways.
Okay. I think I covered most of the questions that I had. So now I'm just going to wing it.
All right.
Now, April is Autism Awareness Month, and I noticed the blue lights on the common. I'm guessing that it's part of Autism Awareness Month. What makes a month, autism awareness? Shouldn't we be aware of autism year-round? Do you know of any secrets of why? Is there anything special going on in April that recognizes what Lisa and her peers are going through raising children with autism?
I'm sure there are events. I mean, I know that different.
That I don't know about.
Yeah, but to be honest, I'm not really sure. I think that having Autism Awareness Month is extremely important.
Okay.
Even me being in the field for, the last 10, 15 years, I've seen a lot more awareness, but I think there still needs to be more awareness.
Okay.
I've been in situations where I've been with a student who may be having a difficult time in the community and been given those sort of looks like what's going on here. And I think actually even some community helpers just even teaching police officers about autism and what it can look like and what to do if a child with autism is having aggression or self-injury. So I think the month is really important, that there are people saying, this is a dedicated month to autism, so we can get more awareness out there.
Okay. Now it's time to put Lisa on the spot.
Okay.
If you were to rewind 14 years, other than finding a new pediatrician, what are some of the questions that you would advise new parents to ask their pediatrician, or what are things to be aware of?
Well, first of all, the old adage is that mothers know best, and you know more than your pediatrician knows. It's absolutely true. I mean, there's no reason for them to doubt what you're saying or question what you're saying, and they should be taking it seriously. You just need to stay up on educating yourself, and read as much as you can about the intervention methods, about ABA, because whatever you think about those biomedical things, the diets, the supplements, the immunizations, your child still can't learn. So you still are going to need to advocate for ABA services for your child to fill the learning deficit that's there, whether or not you can treat the physical affliction of autism. So really trust your instincts. Make sure that your child at a very young age is seeking attention from people, being social, sharing toys, playing peekaboo, doing those typical things that babies do, and ask a lot of questions. Ask a lot of questions and ask your pediatrician, is this normal?
Okay. Another one to put you on the spot. Having a child with autism, you mentioned going to the grocery store is a huge issue. When was the last time you took your child out to a restaurant? Is there anything that you would like to say to those other people in the grocery store that look at you funny or say something under their breath? Is there any?
Well, my husband has said those things.
Okay.
We like to take Sam out to restaurants as frequently as we can. Not only does he enjoy it, but I decided when he was 3 that I was not willing to give up restaurants for myself. So that meant we all had to go. We've been through him throwing plates, property destruction in restaurants, screaming tantrums, aggressing toward either one of us in restaurants, not being able to tolerate waiting. Any parent out there that gets a diagnosis, you need to think about, when the child is 10, what do I want that child to be able to do? Do not keep your child home and away from social situations because of the embarrassment of the child acting up or breaking something or throwing something or wetting their pants. You know what? You have to work on it constantly, and don't be embarrassed.
Okay.
Just don't let someone else bother you. My husband has said to people, "Are you enjoying the show?" It's the awareness thing again.
Well, hate to break up this conversation, but we are out of time. So I would like to thank you very much for coming, and I wish you both the best of luck. And I would also like to thank everyone at home for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you around town. So have a great week, and see you next time. Thanks. Good night.